Hi everyone, welcome to Malevolent Autopsy. This is a show hosted by patrons, featuring patron content recorded live in the Invictus Discord as Malevolent is in its 5th season. This show is chock full of spoilers since every episode is meant to comment on a recent update. So, if you want to avoid spoilers for all of Malevolent as it's been released to chapter 240 or part 48, check out now and come back next time. Our episodes are archived in the Discord before they're released to the public, so you can always listen later. I'm Queen, my pronouns are she, her, and tonight I control Arthur's left tricep.
Fuck, I didn't think of a body part. Shit. Guys, throw some out at me. Meanwhile, hi, I'm Peppers, pronouns she, her. I'm controlling his hippocampus? What the fuck is that? I don't know what that is. Yeah, whatever that is, I'm controlling his hippo.
Great. I love that. Love that for him. Vol control suggested vertebrae, and I have to tell you, that is a little bit too big of a job for one person. I think Peppers and I would have to do that together. All right.
So, part 240. John persuades Arthur to part with the ring. However, Arthur has decided to deposit it in a bowl for safekeeping. As they move down the hallway, Barnabas reveals that he's been waiting for them. Or for Arthur, not them. He doesn't even know John's there. He tries to persuade Arthur to ally with him, but Arthur seems reluctant and begins to question him. Barnabas has a wit hidden behind the veneer of drunkenness, but he leaves Arthur to his devices. They all go to the body of Langward. He has died with his throat slit from behind. His blood has sprayed the altar of the church, which, personally for me, it was an incredible visual. They searched Langward's body, and he was indeed missing his order ring. They begin to debate if they should turn out their pockets, pointing to each other as suspects. They also wonder if the witch, who was meant to be there for their protection, is also a suspect. Using this time, Arthur begins to stoke Barnabas's rage and goads him into a fight. He leads him towards the table where he had stashed the ring, pushes Barnabas into the table, and it then tumbles, the ring falling onto the ground beside Barnabas. What is that, Barnabas? Is that your ring? Tempers rise. Arthur tries to calm them all, stressing that they all should use their shared knowledge to form a proper deduction. They all collectively agreed, save for Everard. Everard shares that his family worshipped an otherworldly being, similar to the same beings, if not the same, that each of them worshipped. He revealed that his father, during his time of worship, killed himself in the midst of bearing a terrible, gruesome smile. This is very obviously hinting towards Grinners, which I know basically nothing about. The worship of these gods always lead to horror, and yet they all continue to worship. So Everard believes that any man there is capable of murdering Langward, quote, "We are not decent men." He doesn't care to participate in Arthur's investigation, but he does decide to spill the tea and share that Barnabas was not with him during the time Langward was murdered.
So, what are Pepper's thoughts on that chapter?
Slay, it was so long.
Yeah, this is the longest chapter we've gotten since Intermezzo and like the end of the part right before that.
It was great. I mean, I was really excited because the reason why I was vouching for the ring is we'd be able to see Arthur once again kind of in his element. You know, once he was kind of yoinked out of New York once again, he was once again pulled out of his element. So it's so exciting to see him play the detective now that we're about to see. Seeing him pull a fast one on Barnabas was so great. Absolutely loved that. I had a little bit of a moment over how, me personally, I just think Barnabas did nothing wrong. And he can do no wrong.
Barnabas apologist in the house.
Barnabas has become my new butcher, personally. Love that man. Love that man to death. And I think that motherfucker. And you know what?
And you did. You loved him so hard that he died.
And you know what? No, I was more talking about Barnabas. I mean, yeah, I also loved Butcher to death, and now his brain matter's all over my house. So, yeah, I think it was a really fun chapter, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. I know a lot of lore nerds are super excited about the Grinners. I know not a single thing about the Grinners. What I do understand is they are from previous Call of Cthulhu campaigns that Harlan has done with his friends, and they played a big part. I also believe that Grinners are a part of the Call of Cthulhu lore, like the book itself. But don't quote me on that. I'm just kind of saying stuff.
So funny that you say I don't know anything about Grinners when we've definitely talked about them multiple times before. And I mean that because there's definitely people who are listening and it's like their first autopsy episode or whatever, and they also don't know what Grinners are, so we get to re-explain it.
Yeah, that's definitely the angle I was going for. Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah, Grinners are, well, I guess it's what happens when you apply blood to the Blackstone, and it brings out the most base kind of violent impulse of the person, and kind of that is what they embody now. So they're a little bit insane, but in like the Joker way. Basically, what I'm saying is the Blackstone turns people into the Joker.
It's the Joker gas. It's the laughing gas. Yes.
So I think one of my favorite parts of the chapter was actually a smaller moment where Arthur cannot really communicate with John and has to just like listen to him desperately trying to figure out what the fuck Arthur is doing. Because, first of all, me, very relatable, constantly in my brain trying to figure out what other people are doing without directly asking them. And second of all, I really love that these glimpses of kind of more more of the complications and the realism of Arthur having a voice in his head that he has to vocally speak to in order to communicate, because that doesn't really come up a whole lot in Malevolent. They tend to be able to speak pretty freely because it serves the story. It would be really annoying if we constantly had this issue, but I like it when it does come up. It feels like flavor and a fun device to play with rather than a burdensome obstacle or something that is kind of twisted too much to be entertaining. So I really liked that moment where he's going down the hall and he's feeling for the when he wants to know when they get in and where they are, and John has to put together out loud what he's doing in his brain and like figure out what information would be most helpful. It felt very cool to kind of have John in real time struggling to get on the same page with Arthur and then seeing him succeed. I really liked that. I know it was a very small moment and it wasn't like the point of the chapter or anything, but it's something that really stuck in my brain as a fun mechanic. And I know this is really hard on people who have audio processing issues, and I have some, but not like this. Specifically for this podcast, they seem to go away. I don't know why. I really liked hearing that John had to speak over other people. Like you could still hear background chatter while John was speaking, because that's kind of how it should be. But again, it would be really frustrating and annoying to have to hear that through the whole show. I know there were a lot of people who had issues with the whole Oscar arc because John kept cutting him off or speaking over him at the same time, and it was really hard to understand. And there's just different people have different needs for what they listen to. But personally, I thought the balance and volume and everything were really well done in showing that John really can't be heard by other people. John is an entity that has possessed Arthur's eyes, and like it just felt very real to me in that moment in a way that kind of grounded me and reminded me of the fact that like this is still an issue for Arthur. It's very normal to us. We're super used to it after 4 seasons of this, but the challenges are still going to come up, and there's still going to be obstacles in the way of new experiences and new objectives.
Yeah, I very much agree. Especially, I think you and me are similar in terms of what we focus on per season, or I'm sorry, per episode. So I also really enjoyed the dynamic of Arthur and John. This really feels like a reward for the past 5 seasons of them trying to figure out how to work with each other. And now they are such an incredible team where John understands Arthur enough that he's able to pick up on his cues and able to pick up on Arthur's goals. And John is also able to guide and lead Arthur when maybe Arthur's lacking in cognitive abilities due to his illness. I love the way that they work together. This chapter just it felt like getting a Sunday after a long day of work.
It was really rewarding, and I especially agree with you. It felt like they were more in sync than ever this chapter.
Yeah, I absolutely adored them. I'm really excited to see how each of these characters, these new NPCs, are played out. I'm super curious about the witch and her being able to carry Langward's corpse. She's not doing her job. I mean, I will agree that she's meant to protect them, maybe. Yeah, I don't think so.
Her name is Aaliyah. You can call her Aaliyah. And I only say that because I'm going to start thinking of the hag, because that's what some people were calling her for a long time.
I guess I'm just really curious to see who done it. Also, are there any predictions that we have of Barnabas, the friar? I'm still kind of leaning towards the friar, but maybe Barnabas. I don't know.
So, briefly, before we get too far away from the subject, because I do have other things to say, Mizra says, I love it in the mines where Arthur couldn't communicate his plan to John in advance about how to defeat the mine monster, and John was yelling and so worried. Then seeing in season 4 Arthur learning to give John cues and some communication while around other people to this scene now. It just shows how much their relationship and trust has grown. I agree with you. There's also tons of people in the chat who are standing their old England dating sim potential murderer. There are people who are like, my boy Jerry. I've seen the name Everard, and yeah, I've seen everybody thrown around. The other thing that I wanted to mention was I was thrilled with how Everard responded to the situation, because really that felt the most realistic to me, where he's like, I don't care if any of you die. I don't care if I'm showing the stone to one person or 5 people or who killed Langward. Like, I just don't care. You are here to serve my purpose, and I know you want to see the Blackstone, so you're on your fucking own. Like, that, to me, that was so exciting. That kind of increased my investment, because I almost thought Everard is going to be like every other person in this type of setup, where they'd be like, everyone go to your rooms and lock the doors and don't come out and blah, 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 trying to keep everybody safe, or at least kind of keep command of the room. But Everard was like, fucking good luck, may the games begin, bitch. Like, and I love that. That to me sealed Everard as one of the coolest fucking NPCs in this arc. I highly respect it, because to be completely fucking honest, in his position, I'd be like, yeah, I don't care. You are there to serve a specific purpose, and Everard, even from the beginning, did not seem like the warmest host. He made it very clear that he picked these people for specific reasons, but that he did not have like an investment in them being comfortable and happy and safe. He just needs them to be there. And if some of them just aren't there when he takes us to the Blackstone, fucking shrug. I have a feeling it's just like everyone's been theorizing for a while now. It's probably just a human sacrifice thing or something. Although it's interesting that he picked people so specifically and highlighted their interesting traits if he's just gonna use them. Like, what do those things, other than the fact that they all have something in common, which is quote unquote that they've seen the cracks, what is it that is actually making them, like, why were they chosen? Why didn't he just go grab, like, anybody else, like a common folk who had seen a crack or whatever?
Key Raven actually said something interesting in chat that I agree with. Key Raven said, I still think Everard planned this. He's been stirring up conflict this entire time. Even with his leaving, he tells everyone that they don't share the same god. I agree. And also the fact that he was like, By the way, just to, like, stir the pot, Barnabas was not with me when Langward died. He absolutely... There's a part of me that is like, oh, he's going to use the blood of people who've died to, like, feed the Blackstone and create more Grinners. Which is hilarious, because I only just remembered what Grinners are when somebody mentioned it in chat about 5 minutes ago. So this idea I have is about, 5 minutes old.
I fucking loved the way he was just like, fucking bye. That was so good. I don't know. That whole ending scene was so good, and the fact that he was like, by the way, BT Dubs, he was not with me. Um, you know, I did not see Goody Proctor dancing naked in the forest. Like, it was very, very, I loved it. It was really good.
Pause. I'm sorry. I don't remember him being naked. I believe that was all just you.
Anyway, I think there was so much in this chapter, and as much as you would think, oh, a 22-minute chapter, there's so much to talk about. And there is. There's just not a lot to talk about that wasn't already put in the chapters. Like, I'm just really fucking excited about what's gonna happen next. And this felt very final, almost like, I know that the door closed behind us, but this felt like the lock. This felt like a deadbolt being shut behind me. Like, no, you're really not getting out of this. And that sense of finality that John had earlier, where he's like, this feels like the end, or whatever the fuck, that hit me at this point in time.
It was just a really nice conclusion, like a nice concluding little cherry on top of our murder mystery. So it has begun.
Yeah, I loved that. Thank you, Volcatrol, for complimenting my incredible John impression. Extremely good. Someone clip it. I am the new John. Anyway.
Yes. Okay, so that means I'm now Arthur. Okay? Clip that. Chat.
No,
clip
you
that.
wish.
No. I'm finally Arthur now. Yeah, I've decided that I'm Arthur.
No, that's not how this works.
I'm Arthur. You know what? You know the one who has the worst eyesight in this relationship? Me. Yeah, I'm Arthur.
We should move to our next segment of the show. All right, so there's no poll this week, which is really the long story short of it. And I know Peppers, as usual, is probably very happy about this. I, however, am in the pit of despair. I hate it. I'm very sad about it. I loved the polls, and for a short time they were very fun and divisive. And now there is nothing, and I am sad and alone. And it's like, yeah, Mizra says Queen must suffer every 5 weeks. Yeah, I feel like this is kind of a ritual at this point, where a little part of me has to die every 5 weeks so that Malevolent may be refreshed once again, and the polls may continue to thrive. So that's where I'm at. I'm very upset about it. But to make up for the sadness of not having a poll, and not really having a poll to argue about this week, we did have lots of wonderful voice submissions. So we're gonna listen to some patrons that are not able to be up here on the stage with us give us a little snippet of what they're thinking about. This could be kind of all over the place. It could be super relevant. It could super not be, but they're definitely all related to Malevolent. So let's see who is in our audience and what they have to say.
Hey there, Autumn here, she, her. I'm going to be talking a bit about blindness and Malevolent. For a bit of context, I am legally blind, but I can still see, just badly enough that it's impacted my entire life. What I think is really special about Malevolent is how blindness is simultaneously a vital part of the podcast, but also not the main focus. I can feel represented without feeling pandered to. Arthur is a protagonist who happens to be blind, not a blind protagonist, much like people are people with disabilities and not disabled people. Arthur's fully blind and can't see anything, but functionally, with John, it's more like he's partially sighted, like me. A bit of a tangent, but it makes me wonder why he just didn't say this in the first place. It would explain why he can still see but is clumsy, but maybe VI wasn't a thing back then, or Arthur just likes to make his life difficult, we all know that. Anyway, to the point, I see my daily struggles in Arthur. While it may not be as apparent in the more recent parts since he's gotten used to John's directions, re-listening from the beginning I'm reminded of our similarities, in the way Arthur has to pay extra attention to his surroundings, how he has to make sure not to bump into objects and such like. I feel this most acutely when John describes Arthur's interactions with other people. This doesn't end with Kangan, though. Fan depictions of Arthur's blindness are honestly amazing. I see people write about systems Arthur uses to navigate, go into more depth about his needs, like using a cane, and it makes me feel more confident in myself in the way that he's adapted and overcome, and it reminds me how I can and have done so as well. You may say, but Autumn, how could you forget about Toph? And to that I say I haven't forgotten, but to put it succinctly, I feel Arthur's disability is more real. Blindness and disability in general aren't things that have a simple workaround like Toph's ground vibrations or Daredevil's heightened senses. The actual cure for disability is just having a strong support network. In Arthur's case, this is John, as without John, Arthur would be unable to see anything. But in many other people's cases, it can be their family, friends, or come from government assistance. It makes me feel more comfortable with asking for help. I've yet to see this aspect of being blind I relate to portrayed in any media, which is one of the many reasons why Malevolent holds such a special place in my heart. Anyway, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed the rest of the episode.
Oh my gosh, that was amazing. First of all, Autumn, incredibly soothing voice. Yeah, incredibly soothing voice. I was so touched when you said that the cure for your disability is a strong support network. What? That is so lovely. That's not something I would have ever thought of. I'm I really value what you bring also to the community, because I know there's a lot of us who, don't share in Arthur's disability, and the fact that you do, and you're able to. I mean, it's not the exact same, sure, but it's, I don't know, it's so awesome. I've been seeing so many people who are legally blind or kind of share that aspect come into Malevolent and kind of gather around it because Arthur feels like great representation to them, or at the very least, they feel connected to him in a way that I think those of us who don't share in his disability feel. So, Autumn, I mean, that was so awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, I totally loved it. Autumn sent that in as text only a while ago, and I really wanted to find the right time to share it and read it out for Autumn, but I'm really glad that she was able to share it with her own voice. And I think that especially resonates with people who have any kind of disability. I personally live with chronic pain and a couple of other things, and I think that there is a stigma around accepting help, and we all kind of know that, but I really think that everything to do with your support network and the people who love you, like, they may not always be able to understand and they may not always have the right answers, but just knowing that the person around you, the people that are supporting you, even if they don't do a good job all the time, even if they're not, if they mess up or they don't offer the right support or they're still learning, just knowing that somebody has the best intentions and that they are willing to learn and listen to you is like huge, because not everybody is so kind and so giving. And a lot of the systems in place in our society, unfortunately, don't allow for that kindness and flexibility built in. Your boss doesn't always care very much that you have chronic pain. They want you to get your work done by deadline. They may not always offer you an extension. Not very many people are fortunate enough to have the type of healthcare required to support their disability needs. And there's so many different challenges out there for people of all kinds of disabilities. I personally, um, in college, we had to host an event for the department, and one of our guest speakers was a woman who is big in fashion. Her name was Natalie Trayvon, I think it was. A wonderful person, just like the most compassionate person I've ever met, and she's very funny and down to earth. And she is actually a fashion designer, and she is blind, so she needs to her different support needs are vast, but her biggest challenge is always explaining to people how you can still have such a strong interest in and passion for and skill with fashion while being unable to see. And that conversation that we had, and getting to know her a little bit better through that event during college, was super eye-opening to how people are not always willing to listen and not always very understanding, but your support network, the people who are going to help you get around and help you navigate the world, very, very important. And I loved hearing what you had to say, Autumn. So thank you so much for submitting. It means a lot. Next.
Hello, my loves. This is Absolute O'Kelly Behavior, she, her, also known as O'Kelly. This will contain spoilers up until intermezzo, so if you're not there yet, please until I finish, okay? Wonderful. Because we don't have a stressful vote this particular evening, I'm here to talk to you about Detective Knoll, Charlie Dowd. I know we have all been missing this man since the end of season 4. We are stressing about where he is, if he's still alive, etc. Well, fear not, I have some interesting evidence to point to the fact that he is, in fact, still alive. Let's get into it. So, in part 39, Charlie reveals that while he was in Egypt, he found this quote-unquote great find. This great find is described as a box containing a stone. What stone, you might ask? Well, I assume it was something on the same grounds as the gray stone that Arthur found, meaning that Charlie would also be capable of finding the black stone. If this stone fell into the same rules, the same lines as the gray stone did, to test Arthur and John to be able to find the black stone. So, if this is the case, Charlie would be a feasible backup to Arthur and John if for some reason those two failed to get it, got killed, or the Blackstone nabbing in general went wrong. So, I think that Kane would ensure that Charlie stays alive even after being shot in the neck as a backup to those two. Now, he may not be the most safe in his physical condition, say the prison pits, but he is still alive. At least I think so. Enjoy the rest of the podcast, all.
First of all, thank you. Thank you so much for giving me a platform to talk about Charlie, and how he's definitely still alive because he serves a purpose. Absolutely. I definitely think that Charlie would be a good backup to Arthur. It gives me very much vibes of if fate had gone a different way. And I have always loved exploring themes like that, ideas and timelines in which, for some reason, quote unquote fate, destiny, chance chose this one person, and if it had just gone slightly differently it would be another person. Guys, we could have had Malevolent with Charlie as the main character, and I don't know I don't know how to handle that, like, as a person. Thank you so much for submitting. Also, I did very much appreciate it. You have such powerful and strong energy. Lambda says, what I go insane about is the part where Kane insinuates that there is no one else with John other than Arthur. Like, they are truly destined to always find each other. Yes, I also love that so much. However, have you also maybe considered, like, what if Charlie? Anyway, I have so many thoughts that I can't even articulate them, so I'm going to let Peppers speak and respond for a little bit while I calm down.
Move to the next one.
All right.
No, I'm joking.
Fuck me then. Never mind.
I'm joking. I mean, super cool. I think Knoll is, a super fun character. I find it awesome how many people are so invested in Knoll. I'm pretty neutral about him. I know Queen's gonna get so pissed when I say that. But I will say, O'Kelly, was it O'Kelly or O'Chelly? I think it's O'Kelly. O'Kelly, you had a fantastic energy about you. Everyone who submits these, I'm like, damn, like, come on the podcast. You guys are great. Like, I don't know, everyone has such a unique voice and a unique viewpoint. I think it's really valuable to the podcast that everyone just, shares their experience and their theories. O'Kelly has, such cool theories. Autumn has such fantastic experiences that they could share. I don't know. This is, hell yeah. Cool beans.
I love you, Peppers. No, I'm not mad that you are neutral on Knoll. I don't really hold it against anybody for not being super invested in Charlie, because it took me a shockingly long time to be as insane about Charlie as I am now. So it took me a while. He's a slow burn, but it's good. It's a good place to be. Okay.
Hi, my name is Rotten Little Flea. I use she, her pronouns. And first off, huge apologies to Peppers and Queen for such a late submission. I have no idea whether you're able to use it, but if you are, I'm probably cringing at my voice right now. But I just wanted to talk about how much fun the latest few episodes have been with the whole murder mystery vibe. Like, I really feel like I've had to dust off the cobwebs on my brain and try and find my deduction and reasoning skills, if you can even call them skills at this point. But it's been so much fun, and like trying to figure out what the best move forward is and what I think will happen next, because, I'll be convinced that something's gonna happen, and then Harlan will be like, actually, no, it's gonna happen this way. And I'll be like, oh my god, that's so logical and that makes so much sense. Probably unlike this recording right now. So again, apologies. But yeah, it's been so much fun. I can't believe it. We're in a spooky castle. Somebody's been murdered. Like, who done it? Who done it? I really don't know. But that's like half the fun. And it's just so much fun. And I love you guys. Thank you so much for putting up with all my nonsense, actually, at this point, and listening to this voice clip. Like, yeah, I do apologize. But yeah, it's been great. I'm having so much fun.
Flea, I need you to never apologize for putting your voice on mic. I love your voice. It's phenomenal. It's very good. Yeah, I am also absolutely digging the murder mystery vibes. It's one of my favorite genres. It's very important to me. I grew up writing and talking about mysteries, and they are still some of my favorite things to think about, make, read. I mean, D&D for me when I GM is just one big mystery. So I loved it, and I'm very into the vibe of this season. If you watch 1985's Clue with Tim Curry as Wadsworth, there are some references that have been put into Malevolent, and they're very, very good. If you have not seen it, please watch it. It's really genuinely so funny and snappy and witty. We rewatched it in the Patreon stage, and it was a hoot. It was a blast. It's an older movie, but it really holds up, and it's very, very fast. Like it's the dialogue is back to back hilarious, and if you're not careful, you miss like a joke, and when you rewatch it again, it's just such a delight. So definitely recommend watching Clue for this season if you are interested in getting into the vibe a little bit more.
Yeah. Flea, I don't know, you're so chill. Don't apologize. We value everybody who, sends a voice message on this podcast. You guys are super awesome. I love seeing how excited people get each episode. Life is life do be lifin', and sometimes it's rough. And so having this podcast and getting excited about an ongoing developing story happening right in front of your eyes, being able to communicate to the creator, and come up with your own theories, and perhaps some of your theories, some of your fan art, some of your comments could impact the story in some way. That is so cool. So I love seeing it in action in this community.
Yeah, thank you so much for submitting, Rotten Little Flea. We really appreciate it. Let's go on to the next one.
Hi, this is Graham, he, him, and I am not going to talk about Anna Stanchik, which I know is a big surprise, but this chapter gave me insane thoughts and I have to get them out. So, the obelisk, the 3 stones in the obelisk. I've talked about them on here before. The gray stone, the crimson stone, and the black stone all represent aspects of Azathoth, spirit, soul, and flesh. And the obelisk is Azathoth's prison, and all 3 of the stones plus the obelisk are required to wake Azathoth from his slumber and essentially end the world. And so the obelisk and the black stone both have the ability to create grinners. Grinners are sort of relevant. I'm not going to go into too much detail about them, but all you need to know, they have a big grin. And in Call of Cthulhu 2, the captain of the Queen Mary cruise ship describes the experience of becoming a grinner in his journal as, I can feel it now. I can feel the obelisk inside me. So the vibes here is when a human is touched by the presence of the obelisk, or you can even say, when they fully witness the power of the obelisk, they become a grinner. Everard says his father witnessed everything. All of reality exists within Azathoth's dream. That's just general Lovecraftian lore. And Azathoth kind of is everything in that way, because all of reality is his dream. And the obelisk and the Blackstone are both connected to Azathoth. And so Everard's father witnessed everything, and I'm thinking it had a similar kind of effect, not the same as becoming a grinner, not in the traditional sense, but like a similar flavor of madness. But that's just a theory, a Graham theory.
You are so beautiful to me. I love you, Graham. Thank you for submitting. I really do appreciate when you come on. Also, you have a great voice. It's very fun to listen to you talk. I am excited to see if you put that to good use someday. Maybe talking a lot about a thing that you're passionate about while recording it is a fun project that maybe someday you'll take up. who knows? No, but I am very excited to learn more about this portion of the quote unquote lore. I especially like the way that we're being introduced to Grinners when you have no context for it. Like if I was just a pure public listener who didn't engage with the fandom, which I cannot imagine ever being. Yeah, I think it's a really good introduction to Grinners and like kind of hinting at what they are and what they do. Again, I'm still so fucking curious to know what else the Blackstone does. It's the only thing, I mean, the very limited amount of information that we know is tantalizing.
So I was thinking, you mentioned that it was the Black Stone, the Gray Stone, the Crimson Stone, and the Obelisk, and they all come together to summon Azagoth, whatever his name is. And he's going to bring about the end of the world. So are we assuming that this is Kane's goal, or is it the opposite where he's trying to avoid? Because from what I understand, he is the son of yeah, sure. I'm gonna call him Azagoth. I don't even remember his name anymore. So, is he trying to avoid that? Is he trying to become the next big bad? Like, do we have any theories on why Kane wants this stone so bad? Because we did find the Gray Stone, and it didn't sound like Kane took it. It was just there, and he's like, yeah, that's not the Black Stone. Okay, move on.
As Nikki is pointing out in the chat, it was Nyarlathotep's goal. Whether Kane is still following that or doing something else is unclear. Nikki has more theories, but can't get into it right now. But I do remember that Kane, I don't know if Kane necessarily took the Greystone when we encountered it. I don't think that was ever explicitly said, but I think he always knew where it was. I don't think that was a stone that he was trying to legitimately find. He was just testing Arthur and John to see if they could find it. I mean, that's what he tells us anyway.
Oh, I see. Nikki says that Kane had access to the Greystone. He can scoop it up with the rest whenever he's ready. And then Graham says Kane likely didn't need to grab the Greystone because he already knew where it was. He can get it later when he needs. Good to know. I think the answer we've come to is nothing. We don't know yet.
That's kind of the response I get for a lot of Malevolent questions. Like, there's a lot of people who know a lot of lore, and it's very useful and good, and they have a lot of theories, but we don't know fucking anything yet, which is hilarious. Graham also wants to add, it's also likely Kane has access to the Crimson Stone and the Obelisk since he killed the Nyarlathotep who had already collected them. By the way, like, brief shout out to Fish, who I've heard say all of these names before, and that is the only reason I can kind of say them without falling all over myself. Okay, we're going to listen to this last submission and then we're going to respond and we're going to wrap up.
Hi, Autopsy. This is Rose of Envy, and I thought I'd give a sneak peek in what I'm working on right now, which is analyzing and transcribing Noel's theme and Bittersweet City. So the first thing I do is I listen to the soundtrack over and over again to try to figure out what the notes are, and if I'm lucky, I'll be near a piano, which means I can actually play through it and try to figure out the notes from there. Sometimes I'm not lucky, and then I just have to figure it out with relative pitch. But I will write out all the notes, and then after I write them out, I can figure out what key it's in based on the accidentals, the sharps and flats that I see. So Bittersweet City I've actually had done for a couple of months, so I knew it was in B major. And Noel's theme is very closely related, so both of these are in B major, or the relative G sharp, or A flat if you're talking in harmonics, but B major is it primarily, and I will go so in depth with it with my analysis, but believe me, I have reasons. So both of these keys, all keys actually, there are theorists who gave characteristics to these, and for B major, some of the buzzwords that are associated with it are anger, rage, jealousy, fury, despair, burden, heart, can be called harsh and plaintive, and then G sharp can be called key of the grave, judgment, wailing lament, difficult struggle, right? So when we're listening to both of these soundtracks and we know how they're used and where they're used, and now we know what these key signatures are associated with, there I feel like is so much deep meaning here, and I will go full and in depth in my analysis when I finally get written down, but I'm just going to let that sit for the moment.
Rose, your voice is like music itself. I love Love your voice. Thank you so much for submitting. Also, definitely not biased because you talked about Noel's theme and Bittersweet City and Noel and Charlie. And did I mention that I love him? I've been thinking a lot about the times when Noel's theme actually comes up. I know that Bittersweet City is a twist on Noel's theme, so I've also been kind of trying to peek into when Bittersweet City comes out. Now, here's the catch, and this is something that I have talked about before that always slips me up. Harlan is fucking so well known for having the wildest things be a total like accident, or it doesn't mean anything, or it was just convenient, but it is also like a completely acceptable thing because, like, you know, that's music he made and owns, and it's really good music, so of course you're going to use it. But I would love to believe that it has a deeper meaning. I also just like the analysis of music in general. I know nothing about music. I legitimately have never been able to read music. I don't know. I can't even understand vocal ranges. All my friends are like, I'm a tenor, I'm a whatever, and I don't know any of that shit. I was a little girl taking voice lessons, and I was told that my voice was not suited for public consumption and that it wasn't good, and then I just like never felt confident learning anything about music after that ever again. So my experience with music is almost none. However, I love trying to describe what music makes me think of or feel. I love that music is so ethereal. You can only hear it. You can't like touch it. It's not a physical thing, and nobody tells you how it's supposed to work. So seeing how everybody's talked about what these songs make them feel or how they make them think and what specific elements come to mind and how they interpret the long pauses between notes, which people have been super sweet and trying to educate me about what technical terms for music things are called, and it's not sticky in my brain, but I promise I read everything. And I just think that it, to me, it seems so. There's somebody else on the Discord who I'm going to try and drag onto the podcast someday, who analyzed like every time Noel's theme came up and like when those scenes were playing, what was going on, and if it was connected to the scene or if it was just like appropriate tonally or something like that. And I mean, so far to me, it seems like there's overwhelming evidence to suggest that original Malevolent songs clearly are like musical cues for specific things that are happening when they're supposed to mean something more or be like they have like a gravitational pull toward a meaning. And I would love to hear everybody's thoughts about that and like read all of their wonderful essays on the music in Malevolent, because although I don't know anything about it, I'm not a professional, and I have a very hard time getting things to stick in my brain. The music of Malevolent is something that has like really moved me in a way that, as somebody with no real background in it, is very it feels very interesting to love something but know very little about it and just be taken away by the wonder of it all. It just is magic to me. So thank you for submitting. I love talking about the music. I wish we got to talk about it more. And by the way, for everybody who doesn't know, and I try to put this in the credits and stuff too, Harlan gave us permission to use the Malevolent theme for the opening and closing of the show. So like, thank you to Harlan for letting us use his official music for the podcast. It's been really nice.
Hell yeah. Yeah, Rose, for a good 2 years, a whole 2 years of my life, I did piano lessons. This is very much a reminder of me learning all my keys, all the different octaves you had to learn through, and you know, the black and the white keys. And I remember none of the terminology anymore, but I do remember that there was a mood associated to which you played. And I would love to see, or hear, I guess, more of your breakdown of the music, because even though, and I'll say this especially as an artist, we might say, and okay, let me preface this by saying I'm not speaking for Harlan. I'm speaking as an artist. When I, paint something, for example, the colors I'm choosing, I may not be doing it intentionally. I may not be thinking, oh, this burgundy actually is discussing an ironic twist on royalty and how it corrupts, something like that. It's more of It is more subconscious, or yeah, subconscious of I'm selecting these colors because they best suit the mood, but that doesn't mean that the breakdown that fans have towards the art piece or the music piece or whatever is a part of this podcast or any media that they watch or read or listen to isn't worth it. The whole point of reviewing media is to break it down and understand why this is evoking so many emotions in its listeners. So I think it's super, super valuable that you're breaking this down. Even if it may not necessarily be intentional, the point still stands. So I'm super excited to see the culmination of your breakdown.
Yeah, I am too. I really look forward to it. And by the way, like, please continue to submit voice messages and emails. You can always email us something if you don't feel comfortable or you cannot record your voice. malevolentautopsy@gmail.com is where you can send anything that you want to have me read out on the show, or any notes or feedback or anything like that. I totally welcome emails. I don't think we're often going to get any, but I want to put it out there as a way to communicate if you're not comfortable on Discord or anything like that. And I really hope that everybody feels like this is a good outlet, good representation and attitude to have for a community bonding activity. And I know that there are niche interests that Peppers probably wants to talk about.
I would love to break down maybe fan art in the community.
Well, definitely look forward to some fun episodes of Autopsy, and thank you guys for coming and listening to the show. I really appreciate it. If you guys would like to join me in thanking people who are here listening to us live, like Graham and Misra and Vol Control and Rose, of course. And thank you to our volunteer transcription team and our volunteer editing team. And thanks to everyone listening in the future. Extra special thanks to Misra, our primary editor. She's been doing a lot of heavy lifting lately, and we really, really appreciate it. All of these people, to restate, are volunteers. They don't get paid. They don't get any like reward for this. I am not able to compensate them in any way yet. This is just purely something they do on their downtime because they care and they like it and they want to support us, and that means so much to us. Thank you so, so much, because without you, the podcast would not be as good. So thank you. I really appreciate it. You can find Malevolent Autopsy on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. You can visit linktree/Malevolent Autopsy for all the handiest links. That's linktr.ee/Malevolent Autopsy. And as always, the horrors persist.
But so do we.